Yeah, I was thinking.
More details have emerged regarding the death of actor Gene Hackman, who was found dead of unknown causes alongside his wife and their dog at the couple's home in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
They called him one of the last true icons of Hollywood's golden era. But Gene Hackman's final days were overshadowed by questions that still baffle friends.
And new theories are also emerging in the mysterious deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy. Who died first?
Both bodies are in a similar manner. It could be a similar time frame.
Fans and investigators alike. Was his death a quiet and natural parting? Or does the story hide unsettling details about how the beloved star left this world? Welcome to a story of fame, brilliance, and the perplexing events that have left everyone asking the same question. What really happened to Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa? Origins and ascent to fame. Hackman was never one to indulge in Hollywood excess or reveal too much about his personal life. Even in the prime of his career, he chose privacy over publicity, a choice that made him both respected and mysterious. By the time he turned 95, Hackman's name had become shorthand for unwavering excellence. He was the man who turned nearly every performance into movie magic. Yet, behind the scenes, something else was brewing in the final chapter of his life, and this secret ending has left fans everywhere spellbound for reasons no one anticipated. Gene Hackman's life story isn't typical Hollywood lore because he didn't hail from the grooming grounds of child actors or nepotism babies. Born Eugene Allen Hackman. In January of 1930, he spent most of his early years in a working-class environment. His family moved around, and like many Depression-era households, Hackman's upbringing was marked by financial struggle. He found refuge in movies, enthralled by stories that took him far beyond his hometown's limitations. Peak career moments.
The winner is Mr. Gene Hackman.
In the late 1960s and early 1970s, Hackman's name was suddenly on everyone's lips. He delivered performances that critics called ferocious and spellbinding, displaying a unique ability to inhabit roles with uncompromising intensity. His second Oscar nomination came quickly, this time for I Never Sang for My Father. However, true mainstream acclaim arrived with The French Connection, a gritty crime drama directed by William Friedkin. Not only did the film become a box office success, but Hackman's portrayal of Detective Popeye Doyle earned him his first Academy Award win for Best Actor. With that statuette under his belt, Hackman seized the moment. Offers poured in, ranging from action thrillers to quiet character studies. He tackled them all, rarely turning down a challenge. He played Lex Luthor in Superman, demonstrating comedic flair and cunning. In Hoosiers, he became a small-town basketball coach, showcasing a softer but equally compelling side. When Unforgiven rolled around in 1992, he won his second Oscar, this time for Best Supporting Actor. By then, Hollywood saw him as a seasoned master. Directors loved Hackman for his precision. Co-stars recalled how he could shape a scene with just a look or slight shift in posture. Audiences were simply spellbound, sinking into each character's story as though it were their own. This was the man who seemed unstoppable, racking up accolades in each decade he worked. And yet, even the unstoppable eventually find their limit. By the early 2000s, Hackman was nearing his mid-70s. He'd earned enough honors, respect, and box office success to last multiple lifetimes. Most would have assumed he'd keep going forever, but life had different plans. A quiet, measured decision to slip away from the public eye came swiftly. His last on-screen appearances, Runaway Jury and Welcome to Mooseport, left fans with the sense that they were witnessing the tail end of an extraordinary voyage. But after the camera switched off for the last time, the narrative of Gene Hackman's life took a subtle turn, and with it, the seeds of a mystery were planted, awaiting discovery years later. Retirement and private life. Hackman's retirement wasn't marked by any glitzy press conference. There was no farewell tour of interviews, no dramatic announcement on talk shows. Instead, in typical Hackman fashion, he quietly vanished from Hollywood. He chose Santa Fe, New Mexico as his retreat, a peaceful location far from the paparazzi crowds of Los Angeles or New York. There, he continued to indulge his creative spirit, writing historical fiction novels and absorbing the tranquility of desert landscapes. He had married classical pianist Betsy Arakawa in 1991, and together they built a life that close friends described as both intellectually stimulating and warm. They had a few animals, among them dogs that Betsy adored, and for a time, their biggest concerns seemed to revolve around simpler joys: gardening, music, healthy living. Some neighbors reported seeing Hackman riding his bike, an image that felt oddly wholesome for an actor so often associated with gritty, commanding roles. Yet, that was the magic of Gene Hackman. He was comfortable in his own skin, unencumbered by the need to prove himself. In 2009, Hackman briefly opened up about why he had left acting behind. He revealed that doctors advised him to reduce stress because of concerns about his heart. The pressure of film sets, the lengthy hours, constant travel, and high expectations was no longer compatible with his health. Rather than risk a crisis, he chose a quieter, more private existence. For a while, it seemed to suit him perfectly. Betsy continued to perform, though her appearances were selective. They hosted a small circle of friends and acquaintances, people drawn to the couple's calm, reflective lifestyle. It wasn't that Hackman turned into a hermit. He simply prioritized his well-being and cherished those he loved. Everyone assumed his final years would unfold in that serene manner. Yet, whispers of unease began circulating when people saw him less often. Rumors started surfacing that his health had begun to deteriorate more swiftly than anticipated, but any concerns remained just that, whispers, until the day those worries became headlines the world could no longer ignore: the mysterious passing. On February 26, 2025, a maintenance worker arrived at Gene Hackman's Santa Fe home, fully expecting a routine visit. Instead, what greeted him was a locked house filled with an unsettling silence. After repeated knocks went unanswered, concern took over, and local security was summoned to perform a welfare check. The security personnel peered through a window. There, in plain sight, was Hackman's motionless figure on the floor. Authorities were called immediately. Once inside, they found two bodies: Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa. One of their beloved dogs also lay lifeless. The initial reactions were a mix of sorrow and surprise. Hackman was 95 after all, and the possibility of natural causes seemed plausible. Yet any hope for a straightforward explanation quickly evaporated. First, there were no visible signs of forced entry or a struggle. Second, an open prescription bottle and scattered pills were discovered, but it remained unclear whether they played a direct role in the tragedy. Third, investigations into potential carbon monoxide leaks yielded no results. Local gas companies found nothing. Even more puzzling, the couple's bodies had apparently gone undiscovered for several days. Some estimates placing the date of death at over a week before the macabre discovery. The official stance from law enforcement was that they did not suspect foul play in the traditional sense. No one else was believed to be involved, but they still branded the deaths as suspicious. In any high-profile case, especially involving a celebrity of Hackman stature, authorities often proceed with caution, leaving all possibilities on the table. That initial approach would soon uncover a cascade of conflicting stories, health reports, and head-scratching contradictions. What exactly happened within the walls of that secluded Santa Fe home? The more investigators found out, the murkier the picture became. Conflicting accounts and growing speculation. In the days immediately following the discovery, media outlets churned out headlines ranging from tragic double accident to unexplained death. However, a real sense of confusion set in when those closest to Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa began offering conflicting narratives about the couple's final weeks. Some of Hackman's friends claimed his health had been in steep decline, pointing out that he no longer took his regular bike rides around the neighborhood. They suspected he was mostly homebound due to mobility issues and that Betsy had been fiercely protective, trying to guard him from stress or exposure to illnesses. Yet these accounts clashed sharply with statements from Hackman's daughter, Leslie Ann, who told one British publication that her father was, to her knowledge, in very good physical condition for his age, and that she had no reason to believe anything was seriously wrong. If that disparity weren't enough, questions arose regarding Betsy's condition. Some described her as so fit, emphasizing her dedication to health and well-being. She was known to do Zoom yoga sessions and had strict dietary regimens in place. How could such a vigilant caretaker and physically active woman meet her end at the exact same time as her elderly husband? Next came the rumored space heater scenario. A preliminary search suggested that Betsy might have been close to a space heater, leading a few tabloids to claim carbon monoxide poisoning as the culprit. But authorities quickly disproved that theory, concluding there was no leak. If it wasn't carbon monoxide, what else could explain both of them collapsing with no immediate sign of foul play? The scattered prescription pills became another focus of speculation. Were they related to pre-existing conditions? Could a mix-up or accidental overdose have occurred? A potential culprit might have been medication intended for anxiety, pain, or blood pressure. Yet so far, no one has come forward with definitive proof. Official toxicology reports remain under wraps, their release date unknown. Still, the story doesn't end there, because as soon as one theory seemed to gain traction, new revelations arose, further muddying the waters. The ongoing investigation. Given the high-profile nature of Gene Hackman's legacy, local law enforcement and external agencies descended on the Santa Fe property to conduct a thorough search. They combed through every room, examined every corner, and analyzed every piece of evidence, from the monthly planner on the kitchen table to the dog's water bowl in the mudroom. Preliminary autopsies revealed no outward trauma, no chemical residue indicating foul play, and no immediate sign of toxins in the air. The sheriff's department maintained a careful stance. No intruder was suspected, but the timing and circumstances of the deaths were suspicious. Publicly, They announced that final determinations would hinge on toxicology reports. But privately, investigators seemed to share the public's bafflement. Usually, a couple passing away together raises the possibility of a tragedy like accidental poisoning, or, in darker scenarios, one partner harming the other. Yet neither scenario easily squared with the available facts. Various theories floated around online forums and social media, each more sensational than the last. Some alleged that Hackman had a secret medical condition that suddenly worsened, leaving Betsy frantic, culminating in a deadly medication mishap. Others spun conspiracies about caretaker abuse or hidden depression. However, there was no substantial evidence to support such claims. All that existed were the official statements, indicating no forced entry and no sign of violence. The only real consensus was that something abrupt had happened. Hackman's final cardiac monitor reading placed his death around mid-February. That meant that by the time they were discovered, at least a week had passed. Friends pointed out how unusual it was that the couple had neither answered calls nor responded to messages, though this silence was initially overlooked, possibly because Hackman's reclusive reputation allowed for extended stretches of no contact. In the swirl of heartbreak and confusion, one truth persisted. Gene Hackman was gone, and perhaps the one saving grace was the outpouring of love and remembrance for an artist who had etched an indelible mark on cinema, Hackman's towering legacy. Soon after the tragic news broke, Hollywood luminaries and fans around the world began paying tribute to the star who had captivated them for generations. Social media was flooded with heartfelt tributes, and major news outlets ran retrospective features on Hackman's career. Clint Eastwood, who had directed Hackman in Unforgiven, made a public statement calling him one of the greatest actors of all time and a dear friend. Francis Ford Coppola, who directed Hackman in The Conversation, posted on his personal page celebrating Hackman's gift for authentic performance that shaped a golden era of American cinema. Film scholars echoed these sentiments, pointing out how Hackman's success was pivotal to the surge of gritty, character-driven films of the 1970s. He belonged to that vanguard of actors like Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Dustin Hoffman, who brought a certain realism and intensity to the screen, redefining what movie stardom looked like. According to Peter Bradshaw, a prominent film critic, Hackman's departure marks the symbolic end of that grand cinematic wave. Fans also mourned the loss of Betsy Arakawa, a talented pianist who had devoted much of her life to supporting Hackman's journey. Many recounted stories of her gentle spirit, describing her as the actor's anchor, someone who ensured that no matter how high his star rose, he remained grounded in reality. No matter how investigators ultimately classify the cause of their deaths, Hackman's place in history is unshakable. Few actors have managed such longevity at the top. Fewer still have achieved it with so few missteps. The French Connection, Superman, Mississippi Burning, The Royal Tenenbaums, these films and countless others remain embedded in pop culture consciousness, testaments to his versatility and genius. Yet, the warmth of these tributes only intensified the sense of loss. It felt as if the world had expected a more peaceful, well-understood passing for such a legend. Instead, we're left waiting for final answers that may never fully satisfy our curiosity. The heartbreak of losing Gene Hackman is matched only by the unanswered questions surrounding the circumstances of his final days. Investigators have turned up no concrete evidence of foul play. The gas company has ruled out carbon monoxide. Conflicting reports about health conditions, the discovery of pills, and the length of time before the couple's bodies were found add layers of complexity. A final piece of the puzzle lies in toxicology tests, yet even those might not tell the entire story. Was it a quiet, simultaneous medical crisis, a tragic mishap with prescriptions, or an inexplicable twist of fate that sees two lives at once, leaving the world wondering what truly happened behind those doors? The deeper one looks, the more questions seem to arise, forming a narrative that feels all the more enigmatic for being so devoid of simple answers. Regardless of the eventual findings, one thing remains indisputable. Gene Hackman's influence will linger in film history as long as people continue to watch movies. His relentless pursuit of excellence, combined with a deep respect for the craft, resulted in a legacy few can match. Yet, it's perhaps the very privacy he so cherished that now contributes to the mystery. If he were still here, he might shrug off the speculation with a wry smile and a measured response, politely redirecting us to the work he left behind. And perhaps that's the final takeaway. Hackman's story, like many great narratives, ends on a note of intrigue. As fans, all we can do is reflect on his towering body of work, offer condolences to those he left behind, and accept that some stories never fully reveal their secrets. In the end, the only certainty is that Gene Hackman was one of a kind, an actor who made us believe, a private man who chose a quieter life, and a legend whose final chapter may forever remain shrouded in questions that only deepen the admiration we feel for him. Thank you for joining us in revisiting the brilliant highs and perplexing final moments of Gene Hackman's life. Let this serve as a reminder that even the brightest stars sometimes fade in ways that defy easy explanation, leaving echoes for us to ponder long after the curtain has fallen